Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. This movement is about us withdrawing from the state of California and forming our own state. Now, a lot of people think that's the same as secession, and it's not. In fact, we want to fight that word because it scares the people that are going to have to let us go. And here's the problem that we have. The people that have to let us go are Democrats. So we have to figure out a way to pitch this deal to Democrats so that they'll vote to let us go. And that's the only way we can win. What we have so far is we have a declaration that comes in front of, and a declaration as opposed to a resolution. A resolution in front of a board of supervisors means they have to direct all county agencies to do something to support that resolution. However, a declaration means that it's simply something, it's a position they support, and it's then read into the public record in Sacramento. So it is legitimate, and it is recorded. And what we want to do with this, because we don't have the 20 years it would take to get everybody together for people to vote in each county. And quite frankly, I don't think we need it, because I've never spoken to one single person that's against getting away from the rest of California. Not a single one. Not even Democrats up here are against that. In fact, at the county fair, we passed that Democratic Central Committee booth. That's kind of a real slow area in our county fair, not many people there. Well, even that guy said, hey, good luck with that state of Jefferson thing. So no one is really against this, but anyway, we pitched this declaration as a discussion item. So we brought it in front of the board as a discussion item. There are a couple of reasons to do that. Number one, they don't feel pushed into a corner. They don't feel like you're trying to back them into a corner and force a vote right on the spot. Number two, it gives them plenty of time to discuss the idea, and it also gives, hopefully, the 200 or 300 people you get to go to that meeting, it gives 50 or 60 of them time to discuss the idea. And it's interesting about the Board of Supervisors. Their chamber in Siskiyou County, anyway, is pretty small. And when they literally can't see the end of the crowd through the door, they figure there are folks that are concerned. And the room only holds, I don't know what, 30, 40 people. So when you show up with 150 people or 200 people, they know darn well you're very serious about what it is you're trying to do. So we presented a declaration to them, and essentially what it says in a nutshell, I don't have it with me because I kind of ran out of the job and came straight down here. It says that the state of California is ungovernable in its present form and its present size. And in order that we in rural counties in California can find some representation that is adequate for our needs and addresses the problems that we have, we need to withdraw from the state of California and form our own state. And that is as simple as it gets. We talked about adding more flowery language. We added a little bit, but really this thing needs to be 2 sentences long to be effective. California is ungovernable. And in order to represent ourselves, we need our own state. And that would do it. It doesn't have to be confrontational. In fact, you don't want it to be confrontational. We very carefully thought this out, because one thing we didn't want to do is confront a board of supervisors and place them in a position where they say, well, gee, I'm not going to support that because you're trying to push me into a corner for things that I don't agree with. So what we wanted to do was simply present the notion that over the past 20, 30, 40 years, we've had no representation in Sacramento that's effective. Yes, we have good legislators. We have Brian Daly, we've got Jim Nilsen, they're swingers, they get out there and they fight for us. But their vote means nothing. I was in Jim Nilsen's office all day last week, one day. And at the end of that, he calls me in his office and said, hey, what in the heck is going on up there with this state thing? And I said, well, here's the problem. You could stay home with the flu. In fact, every Republican in the State House could stay home with the flu, and everyone else, the Democrats all show up, they can get a quorum, and they can pass any law they want, any day they want, regardless of who likes it or who doesn't like it. And it doesn't matter whether the Republican Party even shows up. It doesn't matter whether the Tea Party shows up. It doesn't matter whether 50,000 people gather in front of the state capitol and say we don't support this, because they are in a position, and these are just the facts. And one thing about this, folks, you have to remember, these things aren't good and they aren't bad. These politicians, this politics, it doesn't have a mind. This is simply mathematics. And this is the reality we face in the North State. The Republican Party is irrelevant in California politics. Rural California is irrelevant in California politics. It doesn't matter what you want. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter how often you vote, and it doesn't matter whether you show up. We're irrelevant. So the point of the state of Jefferson is to make ourselves relevant again. And we can do that with self-representation. So now on September the 3rd, our board, and by the way, this wasn't an easy sell. It wasn't one of those deals, oh gosh, I've been waiting for 20 years for somebody to do that. There were some very skeptical people. For example, how would we gain funding? In other words, you may be asked questions because that's the point of the discussion item. How would this new state fund itself? Our response is with a favorable corporate tax rate, a favorable attitude toward business, a property tax rate that people could count on, that the state wouldn't change every 5 minutes, a favorable climate toward business, thank you. And we would have every business that's bailing out of the state of California, instead of going to Texas, they'd load up the U-Haul, drive 2 hours north and park in a brand new state where people wanted business and jobs. And I guarantee you the economy of our state would flourish. We would have more jobs than we have people to fill those jobs if we simply ended the environment under which California operates, which is so unfavorable to business that they're bailing out of this state at an apocalyptic rate. If we fix that and nothing else, we would be okay. Another thing, they say, well, okay, who's going to do the road work? Well, that's what committees of reconciliation are for. Once we have a state constitution, provided we win, then we form committees of reconciliation and they divvy up the stuff. Who gets the Caltrans bulldozers left over in Reading? Who has to pay for some levee improvement that they never finished paying for? And that's what those committees would do. Now, if we could somehow engineer the situation so that that debt is apportioned according to population, well, we'd be in tall cotton because 93% of the people don't live in the new state. So we'd end up maybe with 7, 10, 12, who knows, % of the debt. And certainly we could discharge that by allowing ourselves the use of resources in a responsible way, because nobody wants to kill the environment, for gosh sakes. But if we managed healthy stands, forestry, if we allowed small-scale mining again, if we had a favorable business tax rate, if we had a deep water seaport in Crescent City, I don't think we'd have any problem funding our new state. So those are the types of questions that you need to be prepared for when your board asks them, and they will ask them. One gal said, well, what about inclusion? Here you are, a bunch of conservatives, and you want a brand new state, and you're going to railroad everybody else out of it. And we said no. I mean, are there any Democrats in this room? There are probably some. I mean, inclusion is the way to win. If we don't have inclusion, we will lose. If we don't learn to speak to Democrats, we will lose. If we don't learn to pitch this so that people aren't afraid, so that they feel like they're part of the process, if we don't learn how to do that, we're going to lose. If we don't get 15 boards of supervisors who are willing to pass these declarations, we'll probably lose. And then, in the end, and here's the most important part, if we can't sell this to the Democratic legislature in California, we're going to lose. So we have to find ways to structure the conversation so that, number one, it does not appear as though we want our hand on the big water faucet, or that as soon as we get a state, we're going to go cut down all the trees and kill all the owls and all the fish. You know, I laugh at that myself, but that's really what they think. That's how they think. They think that the resources are to be stewarded by them in their way. And so there are some conversations that we avoid when we're having these discussions out in the open. I never mention water, I don't mention forestry, I don't mention fish, I don't mention saving the environment. Here's the way I pitch it. We do not have adequate representation to suit our needs. You, on the other hand, have problems in urban Southern California that we can't even understand. We don't have large gangs. We don't have densely packed urban areas. We don't have the traffic problems. We don't have the infrastructure problems. We don't have the water problems. And we, on the other hand, have problems that you people can't possibly understand. You know, we're underemployed, we have poor economies, we have people who are destitute, we have families that are in trouble, which is causing a rise in elder abuse, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, and so on. We have Mexican drug cartels operating in the forest with impunity because we don't have enough of a sheriff's department to go prosecute them or catch them. All of those things are problems that we have that urban Southern California can't even imagine and don't know how to address. So the way for us to have inclusion is to say that because this state is so diverse and geographically so big, it is ungovernable in its present state, in its present form. And what we need to do is we need to separate 18, 19, 20 of the Northern California counties, however many are interested, so that we can change that and we can have adequate representation. Now, things like water and trees and all that stuff, those are things that the State Constitutional Convention will address, and quite frankly, much bigger brains than mine need to be involved in that, because those are complex issues that have to be handled correctly so that we do not repeat the mistakes that California has made. And one of those mistakes, by the way, in my opinion, in California you can change the Constitution quicker than you can change your socks. The Assembly can change the Constitution, an initiative can change the Constitution, the Senate can change the Constitution. I think the governor can probably do it, I'm not sure about that. But what we want is a constitutional framework that protects the rights of the individual, the rights of property, the rights of people to govern themselves where that is allowed by law, and that framework should never be changed. Your code of regulations, those are the things you change. Your penal codes, health and safety codes, government codes, those are the things that adapt and change with technology and with people and with demographics. But once again, like the federal Constitution, as Daniel Webster said, the Constitution was meant to protect us from the good intentions of well-meaning despots. They mean well, but they mean to govern. They mean to be good masters, but they mean to be your master. And that's what a Constitution protects us against. And it's not technology, not changing times. The Founding Fathers lived in changing times. In fact, their experiment with constitutional republic changed the world and scared the dickens out of every king and queen in Europe. They knew what changing times were, but they also knew that human nature never changes. And that's the type of constitution I can imagine in California. And we can accomplish a great many things with that constitution. We can accomplish inclusion, for one. We can accomplish majority rule, but the minority has rights. We can accomplish all kinds of stewardship things, excuse me, a lot of tax things. But first of all, first and foremost, we have to win. Because if we don't have our own state, the rest of it's irrelevant. So the way we see this, and we have formed a committee, the Jefferson Declaration Committee, and we have a website, jeffersondeclaration.net. So you can kind of look at you can look at our sample declaration, you can look at our action plan, and you can look at some of the bullet points, which are the reasons we think that a new state is not only a good idea, but really our lives will never change for the better unless we accomplish this. If we don't accomplish this, we can look forward to more of the same. And now we have some things in our favor in order to accomplish this. There are so many idiotic laws coming out of Sacramento right now, I can't imagine that anyone, Democrat or Republican, is actually in favor of some of this stuff. The child transgender law, the governor just signed SB 1, or he either signed it or he's about to sign it, which is regional governance for sustainable communities all over California. Well, gosh, can you imagine that we're so pinched for land in Wairika, California, that we need stack and pack along I-5? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, and it won't work because we couldn't pay for it. And no one else would be willing to pay for it. In fact, rural California is a net welfare state. We don't contribute to the general fund. We get money from them. And that could be our ticket out. If we could pitch this to them as though here's your chance to get rid of 90% of the welfare cases in Northern California just by letting us go. And we'll handle it ourselves. And then you all down south, you can keep the loot and that all the riches that you have, and you can address your problems with that and leave us alone. We'll figure it out. And we would. And one guy asked me, well, how the heck are you going to fix the roads and do as good a job as Caltrans? And I looked right back at him and I said, if I was free, I could live with a few potholes. I mean, if I was free, I could live with a great many things. I've never had the best stuff. I don't know, probably none of you have either. In fact, I had a county guy complain to me, we haven't had new equipment in 2 years. And I looked back at him and I said, I've never had new equipment. You know? So those are the things that we could probably accomplish with this state, a great many things. And like I said, bigger brains than mine will have to figure that out. But here's what we need to do first. And this is job number one. We need to win. That sounds silly, but it's true. How are we going to win? First, we need to have declarations of separation, or declarations of withdrawal, we're calling it, because we want to avoid that secession word. It brings to mind tinfoil hats, and it scares people. And when they get scared, they vote no. So believe me, our language in this and our way of addressing the issues are of paramount importance. If we don't address these things correctly, we're going to scare people and they're going to say no. If the people down south think all we want is to get our hand on the resources and then squeeze them for every dollar, they're going to vote no. And believe me, they can vote no. It is well within their power to send us packing. So we have to change the dynamic, change the conversation, so that, and I'm serious about this, it has to be a win-win. They have to win in letting us go. We know we're going to win if they let us go. Democrats have to feel like this is a win for them, and it should be. Because this isn't about party. It isn't about resources. It isn't about saving the environment. It doesn't have anything to do with any of those things. Somebody asked me, well, you just want the water. Well, I told them, look, the feds already own the water. The state of California signed over the Sacramento River years and years ago. No matter what we do, the feds are still going to be the feds. Now, in our new state, hopefully we can hold them to the letter of the law. We can hopefully avoid federal intrusion to the highest degree the law allows, but that's it, because the law is still the law. And if we don't operate within the law, we're going to lose. And remember, our objective here is a successful outcome. And if we don't win, we weren't a success. Now, once we have our own state, once we have a state constitution, once we have these committees of reconciliation, we can fight over a lot of stuff. And we can do a great many things. But we will not win unless we include. We will not win unless we can convince the rest of the state that they're going to win as well. And it is not my intention to exclude anyone. I wouldn't want to live in a place like that, because we all know how it feels to be excluded, right? We're excluded every day in politics. So I'm not here to rain on the Democrats' parade. They're welcome, and hopefully they can contribute. One of our supervisors is a very strong Democrat, and quite frankly, he's a pretty level-headed guy, and he has some pretty interesting thoughts. We need to listen to those people. We need to take their opinions into account too. Where we differ, we'll vote. Where we differ, the law will differentiate who takes precedent that day. But this is simply us getting a chance to have representation that protects the people, protects their rights, and under a nation of laws guarantees them the satisfaction that they can wake up in the morning and it will be the same, and that they can provide for their families and give a decent life to their families. That's what this is about. So how do we do it? First of all, thanks. I have one supporter. So first of all, we have to have declarations of withdrawal presented to as many boards of supervisors and I'm just going to throw this out there, within the historic geographic boundary of the state of Jefferson. You know, it's another thing. I've talked to people as far away as El Dorado and Placer County, Nevada County. No one thinks this is silly. No one. They all want in. But we can't have that many counties, because you know why? If we do, we'll lose. Because if we take a C from El Dorado County down the spine of the Sierras and then turn left again at Riverside, San Bernardino, and go into Orange County and San Diego, they're going to be sitting there looking at themselves as a little island among a state filled with free people, and they'll vote no. And we'll lose. So what we need to do is bite off a chunk that we can chew and swallow, and then leave the door open. If other counties wish to try to withdraw, we would certainly welcome them. And I think that that is our best chance of success. So we're kind of looking at El Dorado, Siskiyou, Modoc, Lassen, Plumas, Sierra, Shasta, Tehama, Butte, and possibly Humboldt. We don't know yet. We don't know how they'll receive it quite yet. And just a couple of the smaller counties there. And that's pretty close to the geographic boundary that the historic state of Jefferson was. We've had a lot of support from Southern Oregon. We can't help them, because if we try, we'll lose. We cannot petition Oregon state legislature for them. We're Californians. We can petition our own legislature. If they want to try to join us, and we would be glad for them to do that, they have to have their own declaration, their own committees, petition their own legislature. Now, Article 4, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution says that and I'm going to cut to the last part of it, nor shall any state be formed from portions of another state or the land contained within a state unless the state legislature agrees and the Congress agrees. That is a constitutional framework to do exactly what we're proposing to do. It's not vague, it's not unclear. It's an extremely clear process. The beauty of it is we don't need the governor to sign this. The Constitution doesn't mention his name. We need a simple majority in the state legislature, because can you imagine Governor Brown saying, oh yes, I'll give up a third of my territory and power? You know, not going to happen in my lifetime. But we don't need him. We don't need the president's signature. Can you imagine the president saying, oh yes, I'd love to have 2 more conservative senators? But we don't need his signature. Now, having said that, we do need Democratic majority, 51%, that's all we need. So we do need, I mean, we do have some Republicans in the Senate of the United States and some here in the Senate of California, but it's not enough. So we have to pitch this to them so that they'll vote for us. And one thought we had was, when we confront these guys, say, hey, you guys are looking for a way to go down in history. Here's a way you can do something historic and something good. Your name will be remembered forever because you voted to allow the state of Jefferson to be created. Yeah, those guys have egos, that's got to help. So anyway, we've got the resolution in front of the board in Siskiyou, September 3rd. We welcome anybody that wants to come up and watch that, because it's going to be the start of an adventure. Not an easy one. Nothing worth easy is doing, or nothing worth doing is easy. It's going to be an uphill climb. Maybe we can win. It's you know, I'm not going to kid you. This is a little bit of a long shot. This is far from a sure thing, even though everyone in the North State wants this. Everyone, even Democrats want it. I had one guy, I was down in Sacramento last week, he said, yeah, I'd love to get my county away from crazy California, he called it. That was a Democrat. So there is a seed there. Now, once we get Siskiyou County to pass this resolution, and by the way, we are pretty sure we already have the votes. We're hoping for a unanimous vote. But if we get 4 out of 5, that'll be good, and it's certainly enough. Then we're going to go to Del Norte County and Lassen County. I spoke to a Lassen County supervisor by email, and where do we start? What's going on? Let me know. Give me the information. So they're ready. Del Norte County, I talked to the sheriff over there. They're ready. They want to do it. But we need small, responsible groups of core individuals, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, to form committees in each county and make this happen. This is one of those meetings that we cannot go home and have a sandwich and turn on the TV and say that was a great meeting. I'm sorry, I wish it wasn't true. This is one of those meetings where someone has to stand up and say, I'm going to take this information and I'm going to do something with it, and then follow through. And that's what we really need here. If Shasta County is interested in doing this, and it's your decision, it has to be. It can't be ours. I mean, we face different problems than you do. Yeah, they're kind of the same problems in a fairly big ship, but they are different. You have an urban center that we don't have. You have probably more leftist politicians than we have. So this might not be the same kind of fight for you, but it can be done, because no one is against this. I find that so odd. I thought I'd run into a lot of resistance, and there isn't any. But people do have serious questions, so be prepared. If you form a committee, you need to write a declaration, not a resolution. That's important. And then you need some bullet points, and you need a copy of the action plan. The bullet points are things that are germane to your county that would do you good if you were able to escape from California, and those are easy. I mean, you could probably think of them right here, right now. In fact, give me 5 minutes, I could think of them, and I don't even live here. So the things that come out of Sacramento, really, they paint the picture themselves. So then you present this to your Board of Supervisors, and here's a problem. We would like to have this done by the next legislative session, which starts the 1st of next year. So we we don't need them all, but we need 10 of them anyway, 10, 12 of them. And those have to be in our hands before the next legislative session. Then we've spoken with Stan Statham, you're all familiar with him. I spoke to Maurice Johansson on the phone. They're very supportive. Well, Stan happens to be the president of the California Broadcasters Association. He knows every reporter, editor, newspaper guy, anchorman in California. In fact, our radio station's a member. So what he is in a position to do is begin a publicity blitz by feeding this story to all of his contacts. And hopefully then popular support and that engine would gain momentum for us. So we take these 10 or 12 declarations, assuming we're going to get them all passed, and I can't imagine why that wouldn't be, and we go down to Sacramento and we find a level-headed Democrat and a level-headed Republican in the Assembly to co-author this bill. That has to be, or we're going to lose. We find a level-headed Democrat and a level-headed Republican to co-author the same bill in the California Senate. And I believe the people exist to do that. And then at the same time, a couple of us are going to have to burn a little shoe leather and go back to Washington City and get a level-headed Democrat and a level-headed senator, or excuse me, Republican in the Senate, and the same in the Congress to introduce legislation simultaneously. We don't want to have to fight the publicity battle 4 different times. We'd like to have this all happen at once, and the timing is kind of crucial. If that occurs, and if we're sincere and successful at pitching this idea as a win-win for California, at that point with 51%, we have the chance to form our own state, just like that. And that sounds kind of silly, but it's easy. So gosh, we only have 9 to go. Where do we start?